Hi there, this is Matt with State of Flex, here with a review for The Shining, both book and movie. The movie's down here at the bottom. I got a 3-pack of the Blu-ray. It's the best I could do. Anyway, The Shining is one that I think is probably Stephen King's most important book ever written. Because in a lot of ways, it's his most famous, and I think it has a twofold effect. It's most famous because it is a damn good book, compelling, rich with ideas, and the horror comes from multitudinous avenues. But it also goes hand in hand with this slick, clever movie made by an expert filmmaker that is both incredibly, meticulously crafted and genuinely sloppy and rushed. And it makes for that movie a perplexing experience that you continually come back to, which just continues to spur the legend of The Shining, to the point where I think on the day when Stephen King passes into his next adventure, so to say, sure, you'll get things that will say like "it author" or "the stand author," but I guarantee that most of them are going to say "Shining author Stephen King passes away at yada yada." It's that kind of importance, and that's saying something when he has had a career as long as he has and as relevant as he has. He's had no moment where he's really gone out of like fashion, at least in the literary world. He's constantly, every 2 or 3 years, putting out a book that really does spawn a cultural conversation to some extent. Yeah, there's been longer periods here and there in the 2000s and stuff, but like even released Holly earlier this year, and I've been reading a lot about that from multiple critical circles and stuff like that. The point is, for such a like luster of a career, The Shining is the story that's going to take hold, and kind of as it should. Now, I don't think it's anywhere near his best book, but in a lot of ways, I think it's the most clever, because it's a book about abuse and alcoholism. And what do we, in our like common vernacular, say when somebody is battling alcoholism or an abuser, or somebody like an abuser is trying to not be so? They're battling their demons, right? And well, this gives the demons a form in the things that haunt The Shining. And so this is a very simple ghost story, while also being a textured, layered story about abuse and trauma, and the brilliance of character in how Jack is written, Wendy is written, and little Danny is written. And as written in the book, all three are compelling characters, none more so than Wendy. Wendy Torrance is a phenomenal character. She is thoughtful, well-rounded. She is looking to escape the cycle of abuse that she's in, while also genuinely loving the person who is committing this abuse, and rooting for him and trying to allow him to better himself. And when it becomes clear that that isn't going to be the case, she is first at like stopping what's going to happen. And she is very much strong agent in her story. She has full agency in the book, and that's what I loved about the book. In all honesty, I don't think that The Shining works in book form if Wendy doesn't work as well as she does. I love the book The Shining. It does start to fall to some of King's tendencies that a lot of people kind of point to as why they don't love Stephen King, and that's where he gets pretty wordy about things that don't seem particularly relevant. We learn a lot about the Overlook. Like, a lot. There are pages upon pages upon pages of reading about Jack reading news articles. And the thing is that stuff is relevant. Like, the history of the Overlook is a character unto itself, and that is really interesting and compelling. And I like how the narrative kind of tells you the conclusion pretty much right in the opening couple of pages. They set up the whole scenario where the Overlook is going to blow, and everything is just waiting to happen. But that also is kind of representative of Jack and waiting for him to blow, and him keeping a cap on that to make sure that it doesn't, and that he is able to push that side of him down so that he can be better. Like, it's painted and drawn really, really well. I like this book. The Shining is great. But it's been talked about as much as it has because it was also turned into a movie by masterclass filmmaker Stanley Kubrick. And Kubrick's interpretation of the book, I don't think is particularly strong. It's not a great adaptation. It's a fine adaptation. It's serviceable. He takes a lot of creative liberties, some of which I really go for. He paints some pretty interesting... he's a great visionary filmmaker. So, like, the visuals put on screen for us to unfold are eye-candy, to say the least. And he draws interesting parallels with mythological archetypes and how Jack and the family are juxtaposed and fitting into them that I think are easy to read. If you've seen the documentary Room 237 about what is The Shining about, the movie itself has lots of different readings. The reading that I always came away with when I watched it, even from a very young age, was the whole idea that Jack is this monster, every bit as monstrous as the house has made him, or not the house, the Overlook has made him, and he is the beast that they need to confront. And so the whole idea of the Minotaur and the Maze, which was talked about heavily in that documentary, was kind of always how I viewed the film, just put to specific words. And there's also other readings you can gain from it. There is a lot of talk about Native Americans and Native American iconography, and very clear Native American and slant in its score that, especially in the back half of the film when everything is kind of going off, that was not present in the book. They even say it was built on an ancient Indian burial ground, where I think this may have been the movie that kind of started that trend. I could be wrong on that, fact check me, but that coming into Poltergeist and other things thereafter, I think stems from this. And it's an arbitrary decision. It's not something that was present in the book, at least to my knowledge. If it was something that I just briefly glossed over. But when that stuff is pointed out to you, yeah, there's a lot of readings there. But I think the amount of readings of what does Stanley Kubrick's Shining truly mean, what is it getting at, in its adaptation, stems both in part to the filmmaker's genuine brilliance and the fact that I think he just did this movie kind of sloppily. Honestly, without much thought. He changed things for arbitrary reasons. Like, what's the point of changing Room 217 to 237 outside of just to do it? I don't know what the reason to do that would be, other than to just 237 sounded better or looked better or something like that. Made it seem more vast, I guess. And he makes lots of changes like that. He doesn't include the whole idea of the ticking time bomb narrative of the explosion that is going to take unfold. That's not present, and it doesn't happen. And it's because of that kind of that the character of Jack Torrance doesn't really work for me in the film, and then by proxy, Wendy doesn't either. And Wendy not working for me seemed to be a deliberate character choice that Kubrick made for her. And this is the thing that Stephen King didn't like with this adaptation. They turned her into a screamer. There's a point in the movie where it becomes so apparent that there is a conflicting ideology of how this character should be presented. Because you have the Wendy character sort of nurturing Danny, who's seen shit at this point, and is calculating a plot to get them out of there. And she's very commanding in all the dialogue that she's saying. She needs to do this, and if she does this, then this, then this, and this is her chances, and she lays everything out before her. But because of Kubrick's behavior and how he went about pulling performance from Shelley Duvall, who is great because she was actually experiencing that fear due to an onset tormentor, she is not selling how calculated this plan is because she is in abject terror, and you don't believe in it for any moment that this waify person is going to be able to succeed in getting them out. Her calculated nature seems like in opposition to the character that we're visually seeing, and there's no reason for her to be that way at that point. Kubrick wanted to diminish this person to nothing but, as I say, waify fear, and he did so by actually putting the actress through kind of torment to get her to that at a constant rate. And I have backlash to that. But on top of that, and what he did stripping down her character, because her character is stripped down far more, like, she doesn't have a great character in the movie. She's stripped of character from the book that is so epically strong and interesting. Strong not in stature or anything like that, but in just how the character is structured. You have Jack Torrance, where he was letting Jack Nicholson kind of do whatever he wanted to, and so, like, Jack Nicholson is a captivating, like, person on film. He just is. But there are definitely moments where his overacting is like distracting. Yet we just kind of go with it and accept it because he really lands other parts. And yeah, maybe it comes off as somebody who's like on the edge of that great big dose of whatever it is that they need to feel better. And it just distracted me, especially the bathroom scene where he meets the other caretaker, Grady. Where Nicholson's doing way too fucking much with his eyes. Like any sensible filmmaker would have him reel it back. It became a distraction to me, genuinely so. And that's something that I found new with this rewatch. Now here's the interesting thing. I did rewatch it, and this is a movie I've seen multiple times. Many, many times. First time I saw it, I was 9 years old. I was in 3rd grade. I watched it over at a friend's house, and we stopped it at like the halfway point, so I went and rented it and watched it from front to back. And I liked it. I thought it was a good, scary movie. It's long, it takes its time, but it's told in such a way that I was invested. But then I didn't come back to it again until like high school. And I watched it in high school after having tried to read The Shining in middle school, and I couldn't get past all the newspaper clippings about the Overlook at the time. And when I came back to it, I was like, I don't know why I loved this so much. And then I had friends that were like obsessed with this, so I watched it again shortly after high school, and I liked it. I responded well to it. It spooked me, and I found stuff in it that I didn't really recognize before, that really worked for me. Particularly the look. That was the time that I was really engaged with the fluid movement of camera, and always there's sharp turns that the camera is taking, just as the characters are in the story. It worked for me. And then I watched this with my wife shortly after we got married, because she had never seen it, and neither of us responded particularly well to it. And then I read the book, and I watched the movie again, and I was like, this is good, but not great, and I really like the book, and I'm not sure I'm in love with a lot of these issues that I think are just so poppy. But then I watched it yesterday, and I really liked it. Outside of this time, I was really struggling with the performances that I thought were just too much. Too much. And everybody praises them, and as they should. They're good performances, but at the same time, it is too much. And that's just kind of my feeling about this movie, is there's so much going on that half of me loves this movie, adores this movie, and there's moments in both of their performances that are so rich and like you just can't look away, but then there's also so much that is just like too much. It's a director unhinged and not reeling in the real estate that he has in front of him. He's letting it, like, he's not trimming the hedges. He's letting it grow wild and out of control, and it needs some refinement. And I, like, kind of hate parts of the movie. Long stretches of the movie. I don't understand why some of the creative decisions were made. Like, I really don't like the scene where they're discussing the cook. Hanlon scene isn't is it Hanlon? Oh no, I can't remember his name. Hannigan? No, when the two caretakers are discussing him and they're dropping the N-word as if it's nothing, and I'm like, this is 1980. Like, shouldn't that have been kind of, even at that point, a little taboo? Yeah, so I just kept, there's a lot of stuff that I think you could shave out of this movie, but also that's the talking points of the movie. There's so much to see, so much to grasp onto. It's a new experience kind of every single time you watch it, which just kind of goes to show that I think largely this was a movie that Stanley Kubrick made that they're giving him too much credit in all the things they're saying he did and all the thought he put into it and stuff like that. I'm sure he did to some extent, because he did remold that book into his own thing. And clearly there's stuff that he wanted to draw in and say, but I think we're giving him a little too much credit into the execution of that for what looks to me like a pretty sloppily made, exquisitely crafted film. And I think it's because he didn't have too terrible much reverence for horror, and so he just allowed, like, things to happen without blithely thinking about things, just because it's a horror movie, it doesn't matter. That's not what the audience is here for. Yeah, I don't know. I think we do give him too much credit for this movie, while also recognizing that there is genius at work going on. And so I find the movie kind of impossible to review, because at times in my life I've loved it, and at times in my life I've hated it. And now I'm at this weird point where I love and hate it. So it eclipses a review system, but makes for excellent talking points, especially if you've read the book and are seeing the movie for the first time, or if you've seen the movie and then are reading the book. there's such a dissonance while also having so much overlap that's the same, but the flavor is completely different. And it's a fascinating conversation to have. Now, the last point I'm going to make is The Shining was adapted once more in 1997, maybe 1998, with a screenplay by Stephen King to try to right some of those wrongs and make a more true to the book experience. And I remember watching that when it first aired. I have not seen it since then, and I remember liking it quite a bit. I didn't think it was scary because you're dealing with low-budge TV, but I liked how the story was told. However, I have a friend who watched it at that same time too, and she also only watched it one time, and still to this day makes fun of the poor boy, I don't know who he is, who starred as Danny Torrance in that movie, and she was annoyed with how his mouth never closed. He's an open-mouthed kid, and that drove her nuts. But it's a movie that I would like to revisit. It's quite long. It is a mini-series event thing. I think it was 2 3-hour nights or something similar to that. And so I didn't get a chance to revisit that. Maybe that's something I'll do next October. But yeah, the book I'm in love with. The book is a 4-star book. I do think it's a touch overrated, but very, very good because it is just functioning on creative energy. It is brilliant, and I like the characters. A little wordy at times, but I really, really like it, and the horror of confronting your demons and the actualization of confronting demons is put to great use in parallel, and I loved that aspect of it. Most of that stuff is pitched to the wind for the movie, so I don't respond well to that as an adaptation. I think it is passable at best adaptation. Delivers on the scares, so if you're going for a scary movie, this is a slow burn horror movie, but it will deliver the scares. There's a couple great jump scares and a magnetic performance of overacting Jack Nicholson as a crazy person that would kind of linger with him much long after this film came out. Essentially, he just plucked Jack Torrance out of this and did the Joker in 1989. But yeah, the movie, I can't really give a star rating. I said the book 4. The movie, I'm giving it 3 stars because I absolutely recommend it, but there's stuff I hate, stuff I absolutely love. It's definitely way better than a 3-star movie. It's also kind of worse than a 3-star movie because there's carelessness to it. And stuff where you're like, what the hell is this in here for? The stuff with the dog, really? Dog suit, bear suit. Is it a dog suit or is it a bear suit? Settle that in the comments down below. Anyway, I've talked enough. Which do you prefer? Do you prefer book or film? I'm a book guy. I say book better than movie. Thanks for watching. Hit that like and subscribe button. Peace.